What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm talking about players I'm going to be ignoring for game week 1, or at least almost certainly ignoring. I reserve the right to change my mind if there's good reason to do so, but I think the players on this list are just not really worth considering, at least from my perspective. And I've gone through from the highest owned players and then worked my way down. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below. 50% off at the moment. Otherwise, let's get into it. So the first player on the list is William Saliba, and he comes in at 40.5% overall ownership, which feels a bit high to me. And it's not that he's a terrible option or anything like that, but I'm not sure he's so good that he warrants being in that many teams, basically. And I've kind of gone back and forth during pre-season about whether I'm going to start with an Arsenal defender, and I'm still undecided, but I'm pretty sure it won't be Saliba, right? And it's not that I think the Arsenal defence is bad. I've had a few comments saying how they're the best defence in the league. I'm fully aware of that. I've had Arsenal players in my team a lot over the last couple of seasons, especially defenders, but I'm not a big fan of the opening fixtures. Villa away, Spurs away, Man City away, game weeks 2, 4 and 5. And although with Saliba you get a player that's absolutely nailed on, he's not really where the attacking threat comes from in that defence. Ben White's more attacking, but obviously you've got to pay 0.5 million more for him. And then Gabriel is definitely more attacking, much more goal threat from set pieces. But is he as nailed on now that Calafiori's there and obviously Timber's there as well? For what it's worth, I still think we'll see Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, and then probably Calafiori line up on the left as their back four to start the season. But because they've got so many more options now, or at least it feels like they do, I just wonder if we'll see a bit more rotation, which is why I'm hesitant on Arsenal defence in general. And I just think if I'm going to go for one of their defenders, with what I see as not great opening 5 fixtures, I want to go for a more attacking player, and I'd probably just risk that Gabriel is going to start those 5 games, and even if they don't keep a clean sheet, he can go and get me a goal. And of course, Saliba can do that too, but the numbers just aren't quite so good with him as they are for Gabriel. So I don't think I'm going to start with an Arsenal defender. I'm willing to change my mind. I might have it wrong, as I discussed in yesterday's video. There's a few things obviously people disagree with. I just don't think it's going to be Saliba. And at this point, I'm almost willing to bet against that ownership. There's better options to put in my defence. 40.5 just feels too high. I'm probably going to ignore him. So next on the list is Phil Foden, who comes in at 27.5% overall ownership. And essentially, at the time of recording, I think we need to be cautious about what his minutes might be for the first couple of game weeks, because Ipswich at home in game week 2 is Man City's best fixture of the opening 6 weeks. Now, of course, they're a great team. They'll get plenty of FPL points in the other games as well, but that's one you really want to target. And if you can't be confident that Foden's going to start, I think you have to ignore him. And the latest news we have from Pep is that Foden, Walker, and the other players that went deep into the Euros will be back late and they won't feature in the Community Shield. That's what he said anyway. Obviously, we'll get to see that match. We'll hear from him again and he might change his mind. But that's the last thing we heard. And that those players will be reintroduced against Chelsea in game week 1 and Ipswich in game week 2. And although I expect Foden to play a hell of a lot of minutes this season, just like he did last year, if he's not ready for Chelsea and he hasn't trained and he hasn't played any pre-season matches, Pep will be happy playing other players. And obviously Ipswich on paper is a very easy game for Man City. It's not one that you need to rush players back for. So I think by game weeks 3, probably 4 onwards, after the international break, we'll see Foden feature quite a lot. But right now, I'd definitely be cautious about whether he'll even start that game. If he does, he could be on for a monster haul. Last year, he finished on 6.6 points a match. Right? He's a great player, great FPL pick, but I wouldn't be going for him right now. If Pep says different before the Community Shield, or if he says different in his press conference ahead of the Game Week 1 deadline, maybe we revisit this. But right now, I'm going to ignore him. I also think for 0.5 more, you get penalty takers in Saka and Son. And look, Palmer's a whole million more, so maybe it's not so easy just to find that money out of nowhere. But obviously, he takes penalties as well. And Chelsea's opening fixtures are pretty decent. I think in terms of minutes, Foden, Saka, Palmer and Son, once the season's begun and they've built up a bit of match fitness and stuff like that, they'll all be fine in terms of starts. But I just think for 0.5 more, you get penalty takers. And I think there is a chance that Foden might not start in game week 2 with current info. So I've spoken about Matt Turner in other videos, but I just want to cover it here as well. Unless Nuno says that he's first choice goalkeeper for Nottingham Forest, which seems super unlikely, I'm definitely going to ignore him because that ownership worries me. He's by far the most owned 4 million goalkeeper at 22.9%. And I would just be concerned that he's going to drop in price pretty quickly. Now, when I spoke about this before, someone pointed out that to drop in price, it's all based on the percentage of FPL managers that sell you. So just because he's higher owned, he would need more transfers out. And that is true. But we've been here before with high owned, very cheap players. They do tend to be the ones that drop in price quickest. I just wouldn't risk it. There is no reason to even take that risk. He's not going to play. He's pretty much third choice. And I would not be surprised if Nottingham Forest signed another goalkeeper before the window is shut. So I would just go, if you're going to go for a 4 million, either go for the backup from the club of, the main goalkeeper you're picking. So Fabianski for Areola, Valdemarsson for Flecken, etc. Or just go for someone a lot lower owned from a club that you're not going to need 3 players from, like Slicker at Ipswich, for example. I just can't understand why Turner is so highly owned. So I think I've come to the conclusion at this point that Dan Burn probably needs to be ignored. He's sitting at 21.6% ownership, so he's one of the highest owned 4.5 million defenders. And I get why. There is potential value there, decent goal threat. And in previous pre-season videos, I've been quite high on him in terms of the minutes that he will get under Eddie Howe. I think it's kind of underestimated how much of a favourite he's been, especially when he's versatile. He can play left centre-back and left-back as well. But the fact they are kind of going for Gay tells me they want another centre-back, and you don't spend all that money on Mark Gay and not play him. He will be first-choice left centre-back. And obviously you've got Cher right-sided centre-back. So Dan Burn then gets relegated to left-back. Lloyd Kelly can play there and Lewis Hall can play there too. There's just too much uncertainty, and I just don't think it's worth the risk. He doesn't offer that much where you need to take a chance with a 4.5 million defender. Yes, he's got decent goal threat, but outside of Southampton at home in game week 1, I still don't actually like the Newcastle fixtures that much. And even if you rotate him with someone else, because of the fixtures, you're mostly either playing the other player in the rotation or you're playing him in away games, right? So Southampton at home, good, but then it's Bournemouth away, Spurs at home, Wolves away, Fulham away, City at home. I just don't see that many clean sheets there. If they don't buy Gay, then again, my estimation in terms of how many minutes Burn will get would go up. But the fact they're in for a centre-back tells me obviously they want another one. They could still buy one after game 1. It just doesn't feel like it's worth taking the risk. The only way at this stage I could see me start with a 4.5 million defender from Newcastle is if we think that Livramento or Lewis Hall is nailed on, because they would be attacking from those fullback positions. And I'd maybe just favour that and just ignore the fact they've got a lot of away games and some tough home games in the opening 6. But I don't know. Dan Burn hasn't really featured in many of my drafts anyway, but I did think he was looking like potentially good value early on. But I've changed my mind. I think I've just got to ignore him. And I think that 21.6% ownership will come down. So Martin Ødegaard definitely comes with the caveat that although I'm probably going to ignore him for game week 1, he is not a terrible option. And if you want to go for him, you absolutely should. I've said before that I think the opening 6 fixtures for Arsenal aren't that bad from an attacking point of view outside of Man City away in game week 5. And ultimately, it's going to come down to how you structure your squad. So if you've got space for 2 8.5 million midfielders, then of course you're going to choose Ødegaard because it's only him and Fernandes at that price point. But if you've only got room for one, I'm finding it difficult to pick Ødegaard when I've got Bruno Fernandes there with very similar stats, very similar minutes, but he also has penalties. And Ødegaard's sat at 17.2% ownership and Fernandes is down around 13%. And that's all there is to it for me. It's not that I hate Arsenal. It's not that I think Ødegaard's a bad player. The penalties and a very tight call is what will swing it. And Man United might get none this season. They could get 4 in the first 10 games. You just don't know. You can't predict it. But when everything else is very similar, that's what's going to make me go for Bruno Fernandes. So if you look at the stats on screen, Ødegaard's at 0.17 non-penalty expected goals per 90, 0.3 expected assists, which is pretty good, especially when he always plays 90 minutes, or pretty much always anyway. And then you look at Fernandes. So if I just bring him up here quickly, should have set this up already. Just go to my custom stats on Hub, and then go to Fernandes. He's sitting at, last season, 0.16 non-penalty expected goals per 90. Pretty much identical. I get it right. 0.01 better for Ødegaard. But the expected assists were the same. 0.3, but Fernandes just has penalties on top. And look, Ødegaard did great last year, and I'm sure he'll do great again. 5.3 points per match was decent and better than Bruno Fernandes, but it doesn't mean that's going to be the case again. And I think even if you look at the fixtures, I think they're quite similar. Like Arsenal have got 3 home games, first 6, Wolves, Brighton, Leicester. And then we go to Man United's fixtures, like 3 home games, first 6. Now, to be fair, 2 of them are Liverpool and Spurs, but they haven't got to play Man City away. The first game is Fulham at home, which is not bad. They also get a newly promoted side in Southampton away in game week 4. I think the fixtures are kind of on a par. You could maybe, I don't know, I think it's quite close. I mean, I guess Arsenal also gets to play Leicester, newly promoted side. I think it's quite close. I don't think there's enough in there to say that Ødegaard is the better option. And so for me, the penalties would swing it. And that's literally the only reason I'd be ignoring Ødegaard. Obviously, you might just not have space to spend that much money on a midfielder. But if that's the price range you're looking at, I think it's Bruno Fernandes for me, just about. So Jared Branthwaite was in the top 5 highest scoring defenders last season. So it does make a little bit of sense why he's currently at 12% ownership. But this one's nice and simple for me. I'm ignoring him because he costs 5 million. And you can get Mykolenko for 4.5, who should be just as nailed on. And I actually quite like the Everton defence. I think some of their opening fixtures are decent. They rotate well. But Branthwaite, in my opinion, doesn't offer enough at 5 million to warrant paying that extra money. There's just not enough attacking threat there at 0.05 non-penalty expected goals per 90, 0.04 expected assists. So there's some goal threat there. And part of the reason he did so well last year was because of the goals. I'm not saying he's not going to get you any. But I think for the start of the season, you're better off saving that 0.5. If I was going to spend 5, I'd probably go for a more attacking defender like Munoz instead. So Branthwaite did really well last year. I'm sure he'll do okay this year, but I'm not sure he'll be in the top 5 again. And if we just have a quick look at the stats for someone like Mykolenko instead, he was sat at 0.05 non-penalty expected goals, so the same as Branthwaite, and then 0.04 expected assists. So actually, they were quite similar. But you pay 0.5 million less. It just feels like a no-brainer. So next up is Areola for West Ham, currently sitting at 11% ownership. And this is a bit like Ødegaard. I'm probably going to ignore him for game week 1, but it doesn't mean he's a terrible option or anything like that. And part of the reason for that is because he's one of the only 4.5 million goalkeepers that's absolutely nailed on with very little competition. The Fabianski is there, and he is capable. But we know at this point Areola is firmly first choice. At clubs like Palace with Henderson and Johnston, and Nottingham Forest with Sells and Miguel, there is uncertainty there that even if we know the number 1 going into the season, a few mistakes and they've got a capable backup that could get changed. You're not going to see that at West Ham, I don't think. But because of the fixtures, I think I'd prefer to go to someone like Flecken at Brentford instead, who's currently in my draft. And it's not like Brentford's opening fixtures are amazing either, but I just think they're slightly better. If you look at the home games that West Ham have, it's Villa, Man City and Chelsea. And if we look at Brentford, for example, the 3 home games they've got in the first 6 are Palace, Southampton, West Ham. Now, absolutely, Brentford's away games in the first 6 are tougher. Liverpool, City and Spurs compared to Palace, Fulham and Brentford for West Ham. But I just think those better home games for Brentford trump it. And then the longer term fixtures are also pretty good for Brentford as well. So there's not much in this one. But if you're spending 4.5 anyway, I think I prefer to go the Brentford direction rather than the West Ham one. And also alongside that, expected goals conceded last season for West Ham was 1.82 per game. They were one of the worst defences in the league. Whereas for Brentford, if I just quickly bring it up here, which I should have already done. Let me just go to teams for last season, then defensive. I think they were around the 1.5 mark. Let me just go to per game. It was, where's Brentford? 1.47. So the defence was much better, and I would say the fixtures are slightly better as well. Now, it might be that Lopetegui really improves West Ham this year, and I do think they've made some pretty good signings, but whether he's going to completely transform that defence straight away remains to be seen. And even if you look at the fixture analyzer here and order it by clean sheets, okay, Brentford aren't anywhere near the top, but they're above West Ham for the first 6 games. And if we spread that out to the first 10 games, it continues, right? Brentford are here and then West Ham below. So I think just looking at the fixtures, I'd rather go against Areola. And the points predictions on Hub also kind of back that up. And it's very minimal, right? If you want to go for the West Ham keeper, you should. But I'm probably going to ignore him. So sticking with West Ham, we've got Kudus next, a 6.5 million midfielder, currently at 10.1% ownership. And I do like the fact that from what we saw last season, he's always going to start when he's fit and available. The minutes are good as well. And presumably that will continue under Lopetegui. Long term, he might have a different way of playing, different personnel. He might make earlier substitutions. We'll have to wait and see. But I think Kudus will be fine for game week 1. But it's just the fixtures, as I mentioned with Areola. I do think they're better for an attacker than they are for a defender, but still not great. Coupled with his underlying data is reason enough for me just to want to ignore him. Like his expected goals per 90 is 0.18 and expected assists is 0.13. That's not really that good. And I think it does conflict a little bit, as I've said before, with how we view Kudus as a player. I think we all agree he's really good. We're expecting goals and assists, but the numbers just aren't really there. Like he'll do well over a season if he always plays, but for a short-term burst like 6 game weeks, I think I can probably do better. And I do base a lot of my decisions around those stats, so I can't cherry pick when I want to use them, when I don't. And if I'm looking at those low XG, low expected assist numbers plus the fixtures, I think I've probably just got to ignore him and chance my arm on a different 6.5 with a higher ceiling, i.e. they might not have the minutes, but they've got better underlying data, or just go and get even someone like, I don't know, Gibbs White, who's got penalties or something like that. So I think Kudus is quite far down the list of 6.5s that I would go for. And I was looking on the predicted points on Hub for midfielders for first 6 game weeks and going 6.5 or below. So this obviously includes 5.5 million midfielders as well. He's really low down the list. Like even Brereton Diaz is quite high up. He's been listed as a midfielder for Southampton, 5.5. But to find Kudus, you've got to load a couple of pages to actually get him. Now, I'll be honest, I don't necessarily agree with some of the players that are above. Like Bruno Guimaraes at Newcastle, he's a quality player. Do I really think he's going to score more points than Kudus? Not necessarily. But that is what the predicted points are showing, that Kudus is quite far down all players 6.5 or below in the midfield bracket. And look, this is a side point which I'll talk about in another video. I'm even thinking at this point, if I don't want to go 6.5, I might just drop down to some of the 5.5s and use that money to spend elsewhere anyway. But either way, if I'm going 6.5, it's not going to be Kudus. He'll make me regret that. And again, when West Ham have a good fixture on, I'll probably be looking at him. But even in that situation where they do have a good fixture on, I'm probably just going to try and find the money for Jared Bowen instead. So I'd just be more sure that he's going to go and get me a bunch of goals. So Kudus, I know you're going to make me regret putting you in this video, but I've got to ignore you for now. So next up is Kyle Walker at 9.4% ownership, and his name has come up a few times in the YouTube comments, especially when I've mentioned Vardio in the video, basically saying, why aren't you talking about Walker as well for 0.5 million less? Well, one reason is similar to Foden. He went late into the Euros, and therefore if he's not using the Community Shield, there's not a guarantee that he would start game weeks 1 or 2. And obviously you really want that Ipswich game for Man City players. But also the attacking threat is pretty much non-existent. Like 0.1 expected assist last year per 90. Like it's not bad, it's fine, but it's nothing to shout about really. And the goal threat is almost nothing. Last year there were no goals at all. He'll take those odd long-range shots, but they're not really going to... It's not like a Pedro Porro or a Vardy or a Trent arriving in the box, right? Kyle Walker doesn't really do that. So I think you've got minutes concerns for the start of the season, really low attacking threat, and just for 0.5 million less. It just doesn't feel worth it for me. And also, like, look, I really rate the Man City defence. I know at times they can be frustrating for FPL because of minutes and or they just concede that odd goal and it's really annoying. But defensive numbers are good, are only second to Arsenal. But then I look at the fixtures, Chelsea away, West Ham away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away, 4 of the first 6. It's not even that good. Now, they are capable of getting clean sheets in those games, but I still think if you're going to go for it, you take someone that's going to play and has got more attacking potential, and that would be someone like Vardy for just 0.5 million more. I can't get behind Walker when he's at that price. If he was 5 and there was a million difference, maybe we'd be talking if I could convince myself he was going to start first 2. But it's just, I'm just not interested. For me, for Man City defence is Vardy or no one, because we saw how attacking he was last year. I think to go for the others, when you're mostly going for clean sheets rather than a huge amount of attacking potential, you really need a good run of fixtures. I think with Vardy, you're taking that punt that he will get the attacking returns as well. So I just don't really have interest in any Man City defenders outside of Vardy. And right now for game week 1, Walker's just not even a consideration for me. So next we got Mainoo, a player that I haven't really mentioned during my pre-season video so far. And I have seen a few YouTube comments saying, why aren't you looking at this player for your squad? He's at 7.9% ownership, so it's not massive, but it's not nothing either. Some of that is probably performances for England over the summer, and obviously his stock has grown as a player very quickly. And I do think he's really good. I'm happy he's at Man United, and I'm expecting him to improve over the next few seasons. But I have got zero interest in him as an FPL pick. Again, you look at those underlying numbers from last year, 0.04 expected goals per 90, 0.06 expected assists. There are loads of defenders with better numbers than that. And Mainoo will cost you 5.5 as a midfielder. In my opinion, he's just not worth a slot in our teams. I haven't actually checked how many actual goals and stuff he got last year. Let me just have a look here. Because he did, when he got into the team, play a lot of minutes, nearly 2,000. Yeah, he scored 3 goals, 1 assist in nearly 2,000 minutes, 24 starts. Like, he's just not an attacking player. And obviously, you know, recent memories, you're looking at the FA Cup final when he got that goal, the assist from Bruno Fernandes, and he can get forward, but there's not really much there to go on in terms of those goal and assist numbers massively growing. I just think for 5.5 you can do much better. And I think this is the kind of player where you've got to split who's a good footballer versus who's a good FPL pick. And there are players in FPL that you would never see at Man United, right? They're never going to go and try and buy them, who are much better FPL picks simply because their goal threat or their assist threat is much higher. And their minutes as well. Like, the thing I would say with Mainoo, he is still very young and he had to play a lot of minutes last year because of injuries and just the way Man United were. It'd probably be good for him if he got a little bit of a break at times during the season and didn't play every single match and just let him build up a little bit slower than how he's burst on the scene. I don't know if that will happen, but I think it's a possibility. So, Mainoo, good player, zero interest in FPL. I'm more likely to buy Kudus, I think, than Mainoo. If there's any other players on there you think should be ignored, let me know in the comments below. Give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Of course, if you want to check out Fantasy Football Hub and use all the tools they've got on offer, there is 50% off at the moment. And if you are listening on podcasts, rate 5 stars and leave a review if you've been enjoying the content. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I'm not sure what yet. I think it's actually going to be my current draft video, my latest, whatever you want to call it. And then there's plenty more stuff to come right up until that Game Week 1 deadline. So I will catch you again tomorrow.